Okay, this morning is going to be a lecture by myself and then a lecture by Professor Ladusa. And then afternoon is going to be the presentations and discussions. So this lecture is on trilingual language politics in Sri Lanka, which right now it's a highly controversial topic. And this photo is from downtown Kandy, and I just took it because you can see the three languages and scripts. Now, you guys already know in Sri Lanka, Sinhala and Tamil are co-official and national languages, and English is a link language. So this occurred in 1987 with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. And this occurred after the Indian peacekeeping force had left Sri Lanka in that period of violence. So Article 18b says Tamil shall be an official language. Tamil shall also be an official language. English shall be the link language, and Parliament shall by law provide for the implementation of the provisions of this chapter. So many Tamil speakers are very unhappy with the use of also in Part A of Article 18b. Tamil shall also be an official language, and they feel like that gives Tamil a secondary status. And that should be changed. And that's something a lot of people at different levels have brought up. So yes, Tamil has status as a national and a co-official language, but it has not been implemented. So it doesn't really have that status. So how does it work? Tamil is a de facto administration in the Tamil-speaking majority areas of the North and East. Sinhala is the main administrative language in the South. But throughout the country, government circulars and other documents are available in Sinhala only. And this is throughout the country. So in Jaffna, most people, vast majority of people do not know Sinhala at all, but then they'll get government documents that are in Sinhala only, right? I think the problem too is that the government has not been hiring translators. And I think the situation got really bad when the former president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, came into power. And I think he cut funding for translators and interpreters. So the situation now with this is worse than it was 10 years ago. So right now, the government has started initiatives to hire translators and interpreters. But something that's happening now is that Tamil speakers, like Tamil and Muslims who work in the government, are asked to do translation work for free. So by the way, can you translate this 6-page Sinhala circular tonight and bring it tomorrow? And so there's attempts to intervene on this sort of free labor that Tamil speakers in the government are expected to do, that they should be paid for. The other issue, the government pays translators very, very little. So the government wants to recruit like the brightest university students to come and be interpreters and translators, but the salary is so low, if you get a post in Colombo, it's hard to even live. So that's another issue. So the government made trilingual initiatives in 2005. The Official Language Commission had issued a memorandum calling for the full implementation of the official language policy. They said that there's a dearth of Tamil-speaking public servants in the South, and many signboards at the time were in Sinhala only. There was an example of that from my fieldwork in 2007. In Colombo, the main road is Gall Road, and they made a section of it one way. The sign indicating that was only in Sinhala, right? So that's an example. So as part of these trilingual initiatives, the Official Language Commission and other government bodies created Sinhala as a second language and Tamil as a second language training programs for government administrators and police officers throughout the island. So this came about in like the early 2000s. And I think it really came out as a way to show the international community that Sri Lanka was trying to bring about peace and reconciliation. It was kind of a show to international communities. And also, initially, they provided bonuses to government servants. So if Sinhala government servant took a Tamil as a second language course, they'd get a certain amount of money bonus, right? So that's how they sort of motivated it. And the problem with these courses is the same problem with teaching Tamil in schools, is that they don't focus enough on building spoken skills for the students, just too much focus on reading and writing. It's the exact same problem. So this was one of the early textbooks, spoken Tamil textbook, and Tamil is taught through Sinhala. Now, the issue with the Tamil signboards is a really big issue. So a lot of times, even after 2005, Tamil's omitted. But these days, Tamil is usually there, but there are really bad errors in the Tamil. And I wrote an article that you guys can see on my website about how people circulate images of the Tamil signboard blunders on like Facebook and Twitter. And it circulates to the diaspora community, and people comment on, you know, how they feel about it and how this relates to the government's failure to implement a trilingual nation. So this was the most famous example. So this is a sign on a government bus that's supposed to say reserved for pregnant women, but in the Tamil, they mixed up the letter, they were supposed to do the letter tha, and they put the letter na. So it changed it from reserved for pregnant mothers to reserved for pregnant dogs. Mother is Thai, dog is Nai. It's a one-letter mistake. And this summer, I actually met people in the government who knew about this blunder, and they say it was not on purpose. The person just didn't know the difference between the letters, and they are more similar. Do you think they're a little bit similar, yeah? So someone in a government office mixed up two letters, but that changed reserved for pregnant mothers to reserved for pregnant dogs. And this circulated a huge amount, you know. And it's even on lists of like the worst signboard blunders in history and things like that. And it actually was on government buses in Colombo. I know people who saw it, so yeah. So here's some other example of signboard errors that have circulated. So in this one, they just horribly mistranslated the Tamil. I guess it just makes no sense with what it's supposed to be. So just nonsensical, like kind of thing in this one. And this one, instead of writing the Tamil word town, Naharam, they wrote Naraham, which means hell. We're going to get to that. Many people think it is. Many people think it is because this is too good, right? It's too good. I mean, too bad. It's not telling me too bad. And this, you know, Kandi, and I'm not going to say the other word, but it's just it's a difference in a vowel. A, the vowel U instead of the vowel A radically changed the meaning of this. This one circulated an awful lot. And then, of course, English errors were common, and this one circulated. Now, University of Peradeniya, Faculty of Arts, like this is the top public institution. So this picture, like when on social media, it's supposed to be Faculty of Arts. Now this one I believe was photoshopped because I took an image onto Photoshop and I zoomed in, and you kind of can tell it was tampered with. But also, University of Peradeniya has one of the best English departments in the country. I just really doubt this sign would have existed there for very long, right? Okay, so here's the question. Are they careless mistakes or are they purposeful? Now, many Sri Lankan Tamil speakers in Sri Lanka think they are careless errors, either in the translating or the typesetting, because the errors can occur in both places, right? But as careless errors, they reflect the incomplete implementation of the official language policy, which many Tamil speakers view as a crucial part of the post-war reconciliation process. Many Tamil speakers feel that language and language rights really was a fundamental cause of the Civil War. So they feel like the full implementation of the official language policies is part of reconciliation. So this kind of neglect shows a lack of any effort towards reconciliation among the Sinhala majority government. And also, any Tamil speaker is well aware of the lack of services available in Tamil. So seeing these errors, it just sort of points to that. But right now, there are so many errors in the Tamil signs that Tamil speakers seeing the errors, noticing the errors when they go around the city, it's just part of everyday normal life. Right. And I asked some Tamil speakers who are also trilingual, like when you see a trilingual sign, which do you read first, the English, the Tamil, the Sinhala? And several people said, read the English first. The Tamil, you can't read first because it's always wrong. So when they look at the Tamil, it's just to see what the error is. And then if they know Sinhala, they might look at the Sinhala because they know that it started with Sinhala and then was translated to Tamil and English. So you want like a really accurate understanding, you look at the Sinhala, and then actually you'll understand what the Tamil error is, right? The errors also reflect inequalities in access to government jobs. A lot of the times it's Sinhalese doing the translating who don't know Tamil well. But I believe this current government is actually attempting to rectify that. My good friend was actually just hired as a cabinet translator for low pay, but extremely important position. The other thing is services are unavailable. So remember when we saw the it said the parliament is responsible for implementing the trilingual language policy. By law, it is a right of a Tamil citizen to have services available in Tamil. It's not like that in practice. How does it work in law? When you file a legal case, that legal case has to be filed in Sinhala. You can file it in Tamil, but then it has to be translated. And I heard that it delays your case 6 months or more. So it's pretty much useless. So what lawyers like Tamil lawyers do is they take clients, they hear their cases, they do everything in Tamil, and then they translate the documents to Sinhala. So, I mean, really, Tamil speakers are not getting their basic rights guaranteed in the Constitution, and that has to be rectified. So there's actually several attempts now to rectify it. There's a project between the Canadian government and the Sri Lankan government devoted to implementing the trilingual policy. And they're working with government offices to develop a plan to actually achieve Tamil language rights. That there are efforts being put into this now. So are they careless mistakes? Most people I talk to in Sri Lanka think yes, they're careless mistakes by people, Sinhala people who don't know Tamil well. And I asked Tamil speakers in government offices, why don't they say anything? And they said that they don't want to create controversy. They're just worried about their job security. If they speak up, it might create tension. So they're not speaking up, but then they're talking about it with their friends and family members is what's occurring. Okay, are they intentional? So I looked at online comments at Facebook from like Tamil speakers all over the world and in the diaspora. And you find that people, particularly from the North and East, who live in the diaspora, consider the errors to be intentional and malicious acts committed by the government against the Tamil language and culture. So a lot of people see it as an attempt to destroy the Tamil language. But you find that viewpoint much more in the diaspora than you find in Sri Lanka. People have even used the term linguistic genocide, the attempt to destroy the Tamil language within Sri Lanka. I don't think I've ever met someone in Sri Lanka who said it's intentional, but I didn't do a wide-scale survey. Now, Mano Ganesan, he is an upcountry Tamil politician. He was the Tamil Hindu Minister of National Coexistence Dialogue and Official Languages from 2015 to 2018. And he is basically the main politician who's fought his whole career to implement the trilingual policies. So in a 2017 interview with The Economist, he referred to the reserve for pregnant dogs blunder as an embarrassing mistake and admitted that a fully bilingual bureaucracy is decades away. He noted that the full implementation of the official language policy will be a prelude to the political solution, one that will address Tamil grievances. So he lives in Colombo, and my friend who's the cabinet translator knows him. So she introduced me to him, and I met him twice this summer. And he said he truly believes that implementing trilingualism in Sri Lanka will promote peace between inter-ethnic communication. It will be beneficial for the future of Sri Lanka. And he is part of the same political party as the current president, Ranil Wickremesinghe. And he's pushing this agenda. But he says he gets a lot of pushback and he gets fights over it in parliament. He said people in parliament, mainly Sinhalese, critique him and they say, language cannot solve this problem. A lot of the problem in Sri Lanka is about Tamils in the north wanting separate territory and a separate nation. How is making people trilingual going to solve this problem? And he said he always replies, and he says he's not naive, he's not stupid, he doesn't expect this will solve all the problems. He said it will improve the situation. It will bring about some improvement, right? So this is a question we can think about, right? Can improving communication skills in different languages, can truly implementing Tamil as a national official language, will this improve the situation in Sri Lanka, right? Can language policy really promote ethnic relations and communication? There's also, I think you guys are familiar that China has had quite a recent involvement in Sri Lanka, and they've even taken over lands, and they're building a project in Colombo called the Port Cities Project. That's going to be like a city within a city. It's going to be like, you know, gambling and nightclubs and everything, and it's being built by the Chinese. So there's a lot of Chinese involvement in Sri Lanka. You know, Sri Lanka took massive loans from China at very, very high interest and has been unable to pay it back. So then China is taking lands from Sri Lanka. So there's a lot of fear that Chinese is taking over, and specifically that it's going to replace Tamil. So there are some signs now that just feature Sinhala Chinese and English and no Tamil. Yeah. And I've seen different ones. I've seen Chinese and English. I've seen Chinese and Sinhala, but often when Chinese in the mix, Tamil is gone, the sounds. So in some of my publications, I looked at the politics of ensuring Tamil language rights and trilingualism in relation to interactional politics. So this is something that we've talked about a little before. So in the Colombo, the capital city, if you look at the Colombo Municipal Council, it's actually majority Tamil speaking. If you put Tamils and Muslims together, right? Yet during the war, every Tamil you'll talk to said that they did not feel comfortable speaking Tamil on the street, and particularly neighborhoods that were more Sinhala majority. So in Colombo, Tamil speakers, Tamils and Muslims speak Sinhala. Of course, Sinhalese do not speak Tamil, right? So Tamils were self-conscious about speaking Tamil in public places. You know, they would either speak Sinhala, speak English, not speak at all. And I think some people wanted to pass as Sinhalese. So I talked to some women who said they wore the more typical Sinhala dress, which would be like a top and a skirt. The more typical Tamil dress would be a shalwar. So they really just kind of wanted to blend in as Sinhalese. Other people did not particularly try to blend in, but that speaking Tamil publicly draws attention to them, invites suspicion. People who are Sinhalese don't know what they're talking about, so then they get nervous. So, you know, out of fear, they just didn't speak Tamil. Following the end of the war, Tamil speakers are more open about speaking Tamil publicly. It's less bad than it was, but they still tend to adjust to the Sinhala majority. Now, something that's really marked in Tamil is wearing a bindi. If you're like Hindus and Catholics wear them. So in Colombo during the war years, many women refrained from wearing a bindi, a sportu in Tamil. So when I was in Colombo, I met a woman from Jaffna. Now, somebody from Jaffna is particularly at risk because during the war, people might have thought that she was affiliated with the LTTE. She said the day before I met her was the first day she resumed wearing a bindi in 20 years. It was the first day that she felt safe to do so. She went to a shop, bought a bunch of them and tried it on and put it on. So that day was extremely significant to her. It was the first day since the war that she had publicly displayed her Tamil identity. And she was in a Tamil majority neighborhood. So I think it's quite remarkable that it took till 2023 for her to put on a bindi. Right. And I think, you know, the situations, definitely people can talk more openly, but, you know, there's a lot of caution still in what you say in front of who, and it's very complicated. Right. So I'm going to transition a little bit. Are you guys familiar with the protest movements that happened last summer in Sri Lanka? Do you guys remember seeing photos of it? So the economic crisis reached its peak, let's say around like April 2022. And in short, corrupt politicians embezzled a huge amount of taxpayer money, stole money from the Sri Lankan people. We're talking like billions of US dollars. So the Sri Lankan government went bankrupt, ran out of dollars. Petrol was unavailable, so people were walking 5 kilometers to work in some cases. Transportation went to a standstill. Food prices went up 300%. The middle classes could sometimes no longer even afford eggs. So in the midst of this crisis, young people from all ethnic and religious backgrounds started a protest movement, and it was called Adagalia, which means struggle in Sinhala. And they called for the resignation of the past president, the current president at the time, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. They called for his resignation. So it actually happened with university students. So it happened with like educated middle-class students. They started a protest village in the main Oceanside Park, the main park in Colombo, called Galface. And the initial participants were more Sinhalese, but then over time, Tamil and Muslim students joined, so it became multi-ethnic. So from April to July 2022, Adagalia was physically based at what they called Gota Go Gama. So Gama means village in Sinhala. So it's just Gota Go village, a protest village in the heart of Colombo. So this was the main sign as you approach the protest village. You can see it's depicting the multi-ethnic nature of the movement. So I was there during this time. I was there July 2022 and spent a lot of time in the protest village. So part of the Adagalia movement was that the young people made an effort to make it trilingual as much as possible. And I gotta say, they did a far better job than the government with this. So paralleling the government's struggle over the last 2 decades to fully implement the official language policies, GGG, Gotha-Gogama participants attempted to make the movement trilingual. And this involved many, many things. So of course it involved the signboards. So most of the signboards were trilingual. So visually it had that effect. The main slogans, they always were created in Sinhala and then translated to Tamil and English. Speeches and text on website and social media posts. And a lot of the stuff on the website was trying to get international support for this. So a lot of that was English heavy, but when they had Sinhala, they would also have Tamil as well. And then this sign is Sinhala only, but a lot of the ideology behind the movement is that they're against racism, religious discrimination, and extremism. So this is a translation of what this Sinhala sign says. So it's in favor of ethnic and religious unity. And there were many programs that occurred, that organized by different people to promote peace and interethnic unity. So one thing that they did is that they had interreligious discourses. So they wouldn't practice any religion, but they'd have these discourses where they would educate people about Islam, about Christianity, about Hinduism, about Buddhism. And students would just attend it like a public lecture. And I heard really positive things, students saying like, for the first time, I learned about this religion. Oh. They also had a Gotha-Gogama school, and at the school, they actually taught Tamil as a second language. I think on a little limited basis, but they did do that. And then, of course, so what happened is that on July 9th, they had did I show pictures of this? No. On July 9th, they had a massive protest that was probably attended by around 4 or 5 million people. And they attracted people to the protest with the hashtag Go Home Gotha, Go Home Gotha 2022. So people traveled to Colombo with great difficulty from mostly the south, but from all over the islands. And they overtook government buildings, including this building, which was Old Parliament or the Secretariat. They took over the president's office. They took over the prime minister's residence. And the police fought back at the protesters with tear gas, but it was expired tear gas. So some of the young people continued to have respiratory problems for a while following this. And also water cannons, and the students did not physically attack the army or the police at all, but some students were injured by the army and police. There's one young man who had a severe head wound. And I think there was another young man who was shot, but I think he lived. So they took over, this is called the Secretariat or Old Parliament, one of the main buildings. They took it over and put up these signs, and they brought a library. So if you go in the front doors into this building, there was a library, a free library with books in Sinhala, Tamil, and English. And it was designed as open to the public. So this all happened on July 9th, right? This mass protest with 4 to 5 million people. And you guys might have seen a picture. They actually went to the president's residence and swam in the pool. And one guy even took soap and soaped his whole body and then like jumped in the pool. They charged their cell phones and like the power outlets. They took the president's underwear out of the drawer and took pictures of it. And they found a huge amount of money, huge amount of Sri Lankan rupees in the home. And I think that got given back, but yeah. So a lot of stuff went down at this time. That was July 9th, all this stuff went down. July 10th, everything was orderly again. July 10th morning, the government buildings had become like tourist sites. So the army was renting this building as a tourist site with well-ordered lines. You could stand in line, go in, go to the library, get some books, leave. And then there were like ice cream vendors, Maggie noodle vendors. So it had gone from this disorderly protest to like a really like orderly thing like in a day, which I thought was sort of remarkable. And then Sri Lankan families were coming just as like a fun thing to do with their family. So for the first time, people got to see the prime minister's residence, the secretariat. And in general, people were respectful. But I think some furniture did get damaged, things like that. So this is where the protest village was. Gota Gogama, it was in Galface, which is the main park in the city. This park had a massive statue of Bandra Nayaka, who was the prime minister responsible for the Sinhala Only Act in 1956. And when that act was passed, there were protests by Tamil leaders against it in this park. So this is a movement devoted to trilingualism, against Sinhala racism and Buddhist extremism, but overlooking everything with this giant statue of the very man associated with the Sinhala Only Act. So at one point, they blindfolded him. They put a scarf around his head. And I guess I heard they didn't really even develop what that symbolism is. They just thought that Bandaranaike should be blind. Later in the movement, after July 9th, they talked about removing it or knocking it over. They knocked it over, it could kill people, it's huge. And if they remove it, they moved it, that's defacement of public property. And that could be a very long prison term for whoever was caught for that. So they ended up doing nothing and it ended up just staying there. But what happened, yeah, okay, I'll tell that in a second. I'll tell that later. So the translation process, how did they create a trilingual movement? Well, often Sinhala writing and speech was translated via English. That's because Fulch trilinguals are rare. So they would coin something in Sinhala and then they would put it in English and then a Tamil speaker would put it from English to Tamil. So any Tamil speaker, there weren't that many Tamil speakers involved. So anyone who was involved had to do translation. They were asked to do translation. So this is one of the main Tamil, it's a leaderless movement, so you can't say leader. He was an important person in the movement. He just showed me a screenshot of how he was constantly getting these messages asking. So here a friend is asking him to put the Tamil into English. But he said he did this on the fly and this translation is actually not very correct. So they improved it. You can see that they improved it later. So just doing like on the fly translations, like all the time. So here is the main campaign, the main slogan, Gota Go Home. So in Sinhala, it was Gota Palayan. And in Tamil, it was Gota Poda. Now, da is something that you could use for like a close friend, but when used for the president, it's insulting. It's like they hate him, right? But it's not really so translatable to English. One way I tried to translate it is go to go dude. I feel like in English, dude can be really positive. The person's your friend, like, hey, dude. But then it can also be used as like an expression, like when you're angry at someone, like, dude. So I thought it was one possible way of translating, but I don't know, Tamil people might, do you think there's any like correct way to translate da? Yeah. So these were the trilingual slogans and these guys stood on stage like all day and said the slogans. And this is an example of an Instagram post that was trilingual. So they had Sinhala, then the Tamil, and then the English, and then the hashtags, hashtags were mainly English. Now, people had different views about the trilingualism. Some people saw trilingualism in the movement as necessary for achieving an ethnically integrated movement, but Sinhala people had different views. Some I spoke to said the trilingual effort is good, but that Sinhala is the main language of the movement. And they made the argument that most of the Tamil people there spoke Sinhala. But the problem is that some didn't speak Sinhala that well. I mean, to listen to a political speech in Sinhala, right, I think was challenging for a lot of Tamil people in the movement. Some I asked about language and they changed the topic abruptly. And then I met another guy, he was a Sinhala guy from the diaspora, and he said that language is not important for unifying the movement. He said what's important for unifying the movement is art. So they had a GGG art gallery and they had large scale sculptures and art installations throughout the village. And he said that's the visual language is the true language of interethnic communication and unification. So here's an example of some of the art. So this is a large scale art piece. It's called Moment of the Struggle. So it depicts a tear gas canister being trampled on by the worn out sandal of a common person. So the special task force, the police and the army would throw these canisters at the crowd. And the young people got really good at picking them up and tossing them back. And then there were relief stations for people that got tear gas. So they were like little tents that had water. So if someone got tear gas, someone immediately came with like a handkerchief and a water, put it over your face, doused water over their head. So as it went on, they became really good at fighting against the tear gassing. Oh. Now, what was the interaction of politics at Gotagogama? So some of the Tamils I spoke to said they mainly spoke Sinhala at Gotagogama. And some said that they didn't show signs of their Tamil identities like Bindis because they wanted to fit into the Sinhala majority spaces. So several Tamil participants said that, and they even said like, they have no idea looking at us that we're Tamil. So they tend to not show too many signs of a Tamil identity at the protest movement. And of course, like youth being unified in one movement was important here. Okay, so what was the aftermath of Adagalia? I'll just get into this a little bit. They chased the president out, Gota Rajapaksa, right? I think he went to the Maldives. Well, he tried to go to the US, he was unable to. He ended up going to, the US wouldn't grant him a visa. He went to the Maldives temporarily, and then he went to Singapore. So with the president out, the prime minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe had become prime minister when they had gotten the prime minister out before, the president's brother. It's a ruling family. So Ranil had become the prime minister. Then he shifted, was just appointed president. So he became the president of Sri Lanka without being elected. And actually in the prior election, his party had gotten no seats. So you have someone as president that people had not supported at any level, right? So when he became president, he started a crackdown on Adagalia. So he came to power in July. Oh, I got that year wrong. It's July 2022, not 2023. So when that happened, the Adagalia participants had a big meeting. Like the main people had a large meeting. I didn't go to that because I wasn't part of that. But they had a conversation of whether they should start Ranil go home. And they had a huge disagreement. So some people felt they should try to get Ranil out. Other people said in contrast to Gota, Rana is a very educated person, 50 years experience in the government. They thought that he might have some chance of negotiating a deal with the World Bank and the IMF for a relief package. So there was such indecision over what to do that the momentum of the movement was lost, and it never really came back. Right? They just, students couldn't, the young people couldn't be unified on a common course of action. So immediately after coming to power, he cracked down on protests and made Gota Gogama participants vacate. And he actually had some, it's called like a special paramilitary group came in the middle of the night and destroyed all the tents and beat some of the protesters. And then they were ordered to vacate. And for a while, there was some small scale protests, but the crackdown was so severe that there were many arrests made at each protest. So there have been no significant public protests at all since March 2023. So right now, young people have decided to just do nothing and wait. And there's supposed to be a presidential election in a year. We'll see what happens. There was going to be a local election a few months ago, and the president was canceled. So right now, people are just waiting and seeing, but most of the main people in Adagalia have court cases against them. And their court dates may be months or even years away. So I think right now there's just a fear of arrest. And there's also a fear that if you get arrested and you have convicted, it's hard to get a visa to go abroad. So right now, young people in Colombo are incredibly worried about their security. So when I was doing my field work, I never recorded. No, I never had my phone out. Once I had my phone out because I got a message and they're like, oh, are you videoing me? I'm like, oh, no. So there's incredible concern for personal security and safety. And people are being very careful about social media posts because you can gather somebody's location from them. So that's the sort of feeling right now in Colombo, this concern about arrest mainly. And the other thing is that there's a law called the Prevention of Terrorism Act that's been in place since the war. And it means that Tamil people can be arrested for any reason. And then it's very hard to Tamil people were involved, but they weren't the ones doing the main actions. They hung back, they were concerned for security. Right, so here's some questions to think about. Adagalia was a movement that brought youth together from different ethnic and religious backgrounds. The movement succeeded in getting President Gota Rajapaksa to resign. They got him out. They achieved their first goal. Important to it was a discourse of interethnic unity and language that, and it was a discourse of interethnic unity, and language was a part of achieving that unity. What has been the impact of the movement? Can we say now? Is it too early to tell? This is an example of one of the other sculpture installations. So how about ethnic unity during Adagalia? Many young participants believe that Adagalia was productive in creating a discourse of anti-racism. That discourse really wasn't a thing before Adagalia. And now it's just normal for people to talk about how they hate racism, they hate interreligious conflict. It became a conversational piece. It was also productive in opening up conversations about the war. So at Adagalia, there was a war memorial for the war, and there was a memorial for the 1983 anti-Tamil riots. In Sri Lanka, it's illegal to have these memorials. So it's really significant that they had them. I was at the 1983 memorial, and there's some Tamil people there who said this was the first memorial they've ever seen. So that was significant. And there weren't so many people there, but there are a fair number of young Sinhala people there who learned about it. most Tamils I spoke to when I followed up this summer, right? Because I was here 2 summers, 2022, 2023. I spoke to said they believe there was some ethnic unity at Adagalia, like the unity was sincere on some level. They felt that at the time. But others said that since Adagalia ended, there's been kind of a resurgence of anti-Tamil racism. And one participant, he's a Tamil film director, he said that he feel like racism is something that's not, it's always there, sort of a level below, but certain things trigger it in certain kind of relationships and interactions. And he said one example is that he's an artist and he had a good Sinhala friend who was an artist. And I guess he borrowed a small amount of money for the guy and didn't pay it back in time. And the guy started saying racist, anti-Tamil things to him. So it's something that's always sort of below, it's always there, it never goes away. But then interpersonal conflicts can like trigger it and bring it out. But I guess there's been more triggering of this racism since Adagalia ended and sort of more Sinhala Buddhist nationalism. Now, what are Adagalia participants doing now? The main people have had a lot of opportunities. Some have joined political parties. Some are becoming mainstream politicians. Others have started different social movements that may or may not become political parties. Right? Some people feel they wasted their time. Some people feel that they thought maybe there'd be some benefit of all the people they've met and the networks they made, but actually nothing good came out of it. You know, there's a feeling that Adagalia was good itself, but nothing's really improved in Sri Lanka since it. You know, the petrol problem's better, but the food inflation is still so bad and it's increasing. And also the current president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, is very much in good terms with the former president. So they feel like the same people are in power essentially. Right. So I'd say the vast majority are angry and disappointed. Now, some people I talked to said, oh, hey, I knew nothing good would come out of that. Like, it's just naive young people. But then other people, including professors and people in high-level professions, said, I actually believe something good would come out of it. I actually had hope. Right? And they're admitting they had hope and were disappointed. Right? So I think there is a lot of anger that all of this happened, but nothing really good came out of it. So yeah, that's it. So I think we're at the end of our time. So should we have a break and then we'll have a lecture and then we can have time to discuss in the afternoon.